As I film this video, things are very uncertain at the moment. The war in the Middle East is having major negative effects on my family, my community, and my country. As a small country at the bottom of the world, we are wildly exposed to disruptive events occurring elsewhere in the world. New Zealand was already in recession before all this started, and now we are teetering on the edge of catastrophe. We face the very real possibility of diesel actually running out, not just being insanely expensive. Prices are rising, businesses are failing, and nobody knows what to do, because there is nothing we can do. I really hope that by the time you're watching this, something will have changed for the better. But even if that has happened, we, all of us, everywhere in the world, are still in for a very long period of instability. So with that in mind, today I want to talk about how we can future-proof our chicken flocks to face the uncertain times ahead. I'm going to go through the main things your flock needs and look at alternative ways to source them. Because when things get more expensive or harder to find, having options is what keeps you and your chickens in a good position. And this isn't about actually doing everything on this list tomorrow. It's about knowing what's possible, so that if one thing becomes difficult or too expensive, you've already got a plan B. Now, feed is the big one. It's the single biggest ongoing cost for most chicken keepers, and it's usually the first thing people feel when prices go up. I've already done a whole video on alternative chicken feed plans, so I'm not going to repeat all of that here. I'll link it at the end of this video so you can go and watch that one next. But the super short version is that there is a lot more flexibility in how you feed your chickens than the feed companies would have you believe. Your hens ate for thousands of years before commercial pellets existed. And while I'm not saying throw the pellets away, I am saying there are ways to supplement, stretch, and even partially replace commercial feed if you need to. Go watch that video after this one. The next thing to think about is bedding materials, specifically nest box bedding first, because that's the easy one. You can grow your own straw, and I don't mean you need to plant a wheat field. If you have areas of grass that you can let grow long, just let it go. Let it get tall, cut it, lay it out somewhere in the sun to dry, and then pack it away in something with airflow. A feed sack works perfectly. That's straw. It might not look like the perfect golden bales you buy from the store, but your chickens couldn't care less. They just want something comfortable they can move around in their nest boxes to create their nest masterpieces. If you want to take it a step further, plant cover crops like wheat, rye grain, oats, or barley. The beauty of this is you get a double benefit. The seed heads can be food for your chickens, and the stalks become your straw. So you're growing bedding and feed at the same time. Another option for people living in more urban areas is shredded paper. If you shred your own paper, or if you can collect shredded paper from a local office, that actually makes perfectly good nest box bedding. Chickens will nest in it quite happily. Now, I will say this is less ideal as floor bedding because it tends to mat down, and if it gets wet, it basically turns into paper mache and doesn't break down the same way less processed organic materials do. But for dry nest boxes, it works very well. For your coop floor and your run, this is where it pays to think bigger and get a bit creative. Wood chips are my first go-to. If you have your own trees and prunings, chip them up. If you don't, ask around. Ask your neighbors, ask on local community pages, ask arborists. A lot of people who do tree work are actually looking for somewhere to dump their chip because it costs them money to dispose of it. This is so much cheaper and you get so much more material than buying bales of pine shavings or paying garden center prices for their wood chip. Now, I will say this, flexibility is your friend here. I had to buy wood chip from a landscape business for my run refresh last year, and it was significantly more expensive than being able to wait for someone who has chip and is willing to deliver it, essentially for the cost of their time and fuel. If you can be patient and put the word out early, you will get a much better deal. Another option is old hay and straw that's no longer good for livestock to eat. This is fine in small amounts, but it's best mixed with other materials. On its own, it can pack down into a thick mat that the chickens can't scratch through, and you don't want that. Mixed in with wood chips, it adds bulk and airspace, which helps keep coop bedding dry, and in an outdoor composting run, it helps the composting process. Fallen leaves make excellent ground cover. Collect as many as you can in the autumn. I have my favorite leaf gathering spot with 5 huge oak trees all close together. I have to drive there, but I can collect as many sacks as I can fit in my car in a very short space of time. Leaves work really well as covering in runs. They also work well in coops when mixed with some wood chip, or you can mix them with pine shavings to make your pine shavings last much longer. If you're buying pine shavings, stretching them with free leaves just makes sense. And one more tip. If you have a local sawmiller or joiners and carpenters in your area, ask if you can collect their wood shavings. Free shavings that would otherwise go to waste, but make sure it's only from untreated wood. You don't want any chemical wood treatments anywhere near your flock. Calcium is a major nutritional requirement for laying hens. It's usually the easy one to provide. You just buy a bag of shell grit or limestone grit and put it out for them. But if that gets too expensive or becomes hard to find, you need to know what your options are. First one, and really everyone should be doing this already, feed back your eggshells. Feeding your hens' own eggshells back to them can't provide all the calcium they need on its own, but it can significantly reduce how much extra you need to buy or find. Here's how I do it. I just collect used eggshells in a bowl in the kitchen. Once I've got enough to bother to process them, I put them in the oven to dry out fully. I usually do this right after I've finished cooking, so I can just use the residual oven heat. No point heating the oven up just for eggshells. Then I crush them up and keep them in a jar to top up the calcium dish in the run. That's why they have to be fully dry, so they can be stored without going moldy. I usually offer both crushed eggshell and oyster shell grit, so the hens can pick what they want. If you ask friends and family to also collect their eggshells for you, provided they don't get their eggs from your flock in the first place, you might be able to get enough extra to provide all the calcium your flock needs just from eggshells alone. Okay, so a second option is, if you live within a realistic travel distance to a beach, you can collect shells. Soak and rinse them in fresh water to get rid of the excess salt, then crush them up, which is easier said than done. Put them in a sack or a pillowcase and smash them on a hard surface. That works, or driving your car over them. If you have a powerful food processor, you can crush them even finer using that. But I'll warn you, it will be hard on the blades. Third option, drying bones. You can dry bones in your oven, or if you have a wood burner for your home heating, you can put bones directly into the fire and crush the bones up. This provides both calcium and phosphorus, which is a nice bonus. Bones are easier to crush if you've burned them in a fire rather than dried them in the oven, but I know not everyone has access to a fire. Fourth option is using pelleted limestone, the sort that is sold for gardens and farms. You can pick up a big sack of this from a farm supply store and it will last for ages. Chickens will eat it if they need to. I have a 20-kilo sack of pelleted lime I use for my garden and grass, and if I had to, I could also feed this to the chickens. Make sure you're buying limestone, which is calcium carbonate, not a different form of calcium fertilizer. If you're not sure, just ask at the store. And finally, provide clovers, alfalfa, and leafy green forages. These plants contain good levels of calcium. It won't be enough on its own, but everything helps to reduce how much calcium your chickens need to get from other sources. And if you're growing these as part of your garden and forage system anyway, it's just free nutrition for your flock. The next tip is really simple. Keep stuff. Keep things that might be handy in the future. I have old chicken run fence netting in the shed I can use to make repairs to the fence or use as temporary barriers. That means I don't have to buy new fencing, which is all imported and expensive. Keep basic supplies on hand, like screws and nails. Reuse your screws if they're still straight and not stripped. Keep duct tape and cable ties for quick, in-the-moment repairs. Just try not to let them be the final repair like I tend to do. And keep offcuts of timber and odds and ends you might be able to use to patch holes or strengthen a structure. It's all about trying to make what you have last longer. If you have old tins of paint or timber oil sitting around, use them. Even if it's interior paint, it will still help. Protect and extend the life of your chicken coop or any other wooden structures your flock uses. A coat of oil or paint on exposed timber can add years to its life, and it costs you nothing if you've already got it. And finally, and I think this might be the most important one, new chickens. It is always good to be as resilient as you can with your flock. Not just because chickens are wonderful animals to keep, but because they provide a steady source of very high nutritional density food from their eggs and meat too if you're raising chickens or culling older hens. Your flock is a very important part of your household food production. So to make sure you're not reliant on hatcheries or feed stores for your new chicks, because those industries require complex supply chains to bring those chicks to your door, at the very least, keep a couple of hens in your flock who will go broody. That way you can raise new chicks yourself to keep your flock refreshed. If you have broody hens, you can set eggs, even if they're not your own eggs because you can't keep a rooster. It is much easier to find fertile eggs in your wider community than it is to get day-old chicks from a hatchery that's constrained by the industrial supply chain. You can ask around locally, check community groups, find someone within driving distance who has a rooster. Those eggs don't need to travel across the country. They just need to travel from someone's nest box to yours. And if you can keep a rooster or two, you can just hatch your own. No further planning required. Your flock becomes a closed loop. Eggs, chicks, hens, eggs. You're not waiting on anyone else's supply chain. You're not dependent on a system that might not always be there for you. And I think that's really what all of this comes down to. Every one of these things, bedding, calcium, repairs, feed, breeding, they're all about building a little more independence into something that already gives you so much. Your flock doesn't need the world to run perfectly. And with a bit of thought and a bit of planning, neither do you.